Well, the Trump administration is asking the Supreme Court to allow construction on the $400 billion ballroom where the White House East Wing once stood. The Associated Press is reporting that on Friday, the Trump administration asked the United States Supreme Court to allow construction on the $400 billion ballroom as it appeals a lower court's ruling to stop the work. According to the AP, President Trump's Solicitor General D. John Sauer petitioned the Supreme Court to suspend last week's decision by a three-judge panel from the United States Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. Last week, the divided panel ruled that the Trump administration must halt construction on the ballroom since Congress hadn't approved of the project. The majority of the panel the majority on the panel rules that Trump does not have the unilateral authority to construct the ballroom, since that would be where the White House East Wing had previously stood before Trump ordered its demolition last fall. Sauer wrote in his request for the stay, "This case involves an extraordinary and unlawful injunction that will halt the ongoing construction of the integrated military complex, including a totally secure ballroom space at the East Wing of the White House, which is vitally required by national security." The D.C. Circuit Court split 2-1 decision upheld a lower court's ruling to halt above-ground construction on the ballroom in favor of historic preservationists who sued to put a stop to the construction. The majority two judges wrote in their opinion last week that whether or not a massive ballroom should be constructed is for Congress to decide and is not a matter for executive self-help. Both of the judges who made up the majority were appointed by Democrats. The sole dissenter was a Trump appointee. The Trump White House is arguing that the executive branch, not the judiciary or Congress, has the unilateral authority to renovate the White House. And the DOJ is arguing that the current state of the ballroom project, which is at the moment an open construction site, makes it harder to protect the White House. Luigi Mangione has pled guilty in Manhattan criminal court to federal stalking charges in the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. No, that's good. I hope that he goes to prison for a long time. Really, this loser will probably lock this loser up and throw away the key. As he made his guilty plea, Mangione apparently made a statement admitting to the murder of Thompson, who was a father and a husband. The AP is reporting that as Mangione entered his plea, a supporter put his arms around Thompson's widow, who was wiping away tears from her eyes, and held her tight. And screw this punk. I really do hope that Mangione does spend the rest of his life in prison. Now, moving on, the matter of banning the practice of restraint and seclusion in public schools is getting a renewed push in Michigan. The practice of restraint and seclusion in schools affects thousands of students every year in Michigan schools. Actually, not just in Michigan, but around the country. Many of the students who are being restrained or put into seclusion are students with disabilities. Current state policy in Michigan makes it very clear that schools should only consider physically restraining a student or secluding the student in a room far away from others as a last resort. The broad consensus is that public schools should be doing more to reduce their reliance on such techniques. In Ukraine, Russian-powered drones hit a home in the northern part of the country, killing a 29-year-old woman and her 9-year-old son, while wounding 4 others, including the boy's father and grandmother, overnight, according to officials. Last month, which the United Nations says was the deadliest month for Ukrainian citizens since the beginning of the Russian invasion in February 2022, UN monitoring officials said that at least 437 civilians were killed and 2,610 more were wounded in July, an increase of 70% from July of last year and a 30% increase from June of this year. Since the Russian invasion began, at least 16,874 civilians have been killed, including 820 children, and at least 51,273 have been injured, including 3,126 children, according to UN Human Rights Monitors. Danielle Bell, the head of the UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Kiev, says that every month this year the number of killed and injured civilians has increased. That trend accelerated sharply in July. The number of civilian casualties in July was the highest we documented in a single month since March 2022. In Iran war related news, the USS George Washington aircraft carrier is being deployed to the Persian Gulf after reports surfaced regarding issues of mental health and suicidal ideation aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, which has been deployed to the region since last November, longer than usual. President Trump's job approval has fallen to 39.2%, according to the Real Clear Politics average, driven by an unpopular war in Iran, along with high inflation, and gas prices. A recent Economist YouGov poll shows Trump with a job approval of just 38%, and in other polls, his job approval has fallen as low as 32%. Today is the 91st anniversary of the signing of the Social Security Act. On this day in 1935, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed into law the Social Security Act, which guaranteed a basic income for unemployed workers and retirees as part of his New Deal policy agenda. Since its inception in 1935, the Social Security program has since grown to include people with disabilities among its beneficiaries.